Hey everybody, just wanted to make a short and sweet video about 5 update ideas I have to fix Path of Titans. Now, the main reason I made this video is for the big update idea that I'm going to have at the end here, so stay tuned for that. But without further ado, let's get started, and the first one is a honorable mention, and then I'll get into the other 5. Okay, so the first one is a snow biome. Now, as everyone knows, right now the only way to play on a snow biome in this game is by playing a server with the Teutonia map. Only problem with that is not many servers have the map, and if you do find a server with the map on it, it's currently bugged. And the particle effect that allows the snowfall to happen, it's bugged out right now, so it's just a bunch of floating base plates, and it makes it basically impossible to play the game in that area on the map. So yeah, that needs to be fixed with some sort of update. So if they were to do it base game and create some sort of special mechanics for a snow biome, I think that would be really, really cool, and that would flesh the game out a bit more and give more map variety and more biomes to explore. And it's just something new to play around with. But yeah, that's the honorable mention. Let's get into the first one. Alright, by the way, I got some Spider-Man 2 gameplay up in the background for you guys to watch while I yap. But I will have like pop-ups and stuff and extra screenshots here in a minute just to visualize things for you. But I figured this would be just something to put in the background for you guys to look at, I guess. This is the equivalent of the Family Guy funny moments and Subway Surfers on YouTube Shorts for those with a low attention span. But anyways, let's get into the first idea. So, at the moment with Spinosaurus and Suchomimus, if you are to go out and catch fish, which you can get buffs from, you have to actively go out and swim after them. But I think would be really cool is if Spinosaurus and Suchomimus would have some sort of Heron feeding mechanic, where they stand by the shoreline and activate the ability, whatever ability that would be, similar to the lookout ability that Struthiomimus has. And then it would attract fish to you, kind of like Rhamphorhynchus's fishing lure, or whatever that ability is called on Ramp. And it would just draw fish to you, and all you'd have to do is bite at a certain time, and you would catch a fish. I think that would be a really cool mechanic, and that would just flesh out more immersion in-game. But that's just a smaller idea. Next idea is a bit bigger, which that's a pun that you don't get at the moment. Okay, so I want to talk about Tyrannotitan for idea number 2. At the moment, Tyrannotitan does have a lot of really good abilities that kind of put it in line with just the rest of the roster, and it works fine at the moment. But it has that feast ability for its heavy bite, which makes it surprisingly good at hunting the modded sauropods, which I'm talking about like Argentinosaurus and stuff. And there's nothing like that in the base game roster. I mean, Barsboldia is kind of like that, but that's just a large hadrosaur. So I think what they should do is add a big Titanosaurid for Tyrannotitan players to hunt. And maybe some brave T-Rex players, but I think it should be more of an incentive for Tyrannotitan players to go after this big sauropod. And my pick for the sauropod for Tyrannotitan players, and I guess Allosaurus players could go after it too, is Patagotitan. Patagotitan was actually the Titanosaurid that lived with Tyrannotitan, and was probably their big game prey that they would have chosen to hunt. Now, of course, they'd probably go after the young, sick, or just weaker individuals, because the fully grown adults would be incredibly difficult to kill, but this is a video game, so we can allow the adults to be easier to kill. But yeah, I think that just gives more to do for Tyrannotitan players when it comes to the feast playstyle, because I've played Tyrannotitan a bit on servers with Argentinosaurus, the modded Argentinosaurus, and it's actually pretty fun, and Tyrannotitan works well with the mod. And if you play Tyrannotitan correctly, you might even be able to 1v1 an Argent. Well, I know you can now, because they just nerfed it. Its combat weight and everything got reduced, which is annoying, but it's whatever. I know some servers where they've just changed the balancing to make a bit more sense. But anyways, here, let's go on to the third idea. Okay, so idea number 3. I wanted to talk about the Nightstalkers, which haven't really been expanded upon a whole lot, but I think they probably will be with future TLCs and everything, because the creatures that do participate in the Nightstalkers class, I guess, or the Nightstalkers group, most of them have not had a TLC yet. But I do think that that group of dinosaurs is a bit lacking, and I think we should add another dinosaur to it. Now, at the moment, the Nightstalkers consist of Latin Venatrix, Metriacanthosaurus, Megalania, and Rhamphorhynchus. It's only those 4, as far as I know, or off the top of my head. And that seems a bit strange, considering this is a roster of over 30, animals. I mean, none of the aquatics are even Nightstalkers. There's 3 flyers, one of them is a Nightstalker, which is fine. Although, not many people know that Ramph has Nightstalker abilities, but it does. But yeah, half the time people forget that Metri and Megalania are Nightstalkers too. Latin's the only one that people remember because it was the main one, showed off in the trailer for it when that update first came out a couple years ago. But yeah, when it comes to the Nightstalkers, I think what we should do is have an Apex be a Nightstalker. And considering that T-Rex is already meant to be an ambush predator, and nighttime with the low light conditions make ambushing for T-Rex players even easier, I think T-Rex should be a Nightstalker, because it also gives it just something else to do. Because, I'll expand upon this later, but T-Rex is kind of minimal in its build when it comes to other Apexes. I'll expand upon this later and tell you what I mean. But yeah, T-Rex could definitely be a Nightstalker. I think they should give Rex Tenderize. I've said this before, like the Tenderize mechanic that Anno has. I think that would just make it a lot more streamlined to play T-Rex. But what I'm getting at here is like some sort of buff during nighttime that it gets. Maybe it's faster during nighttime, or it's tankier, or does more damage during the night, something like that. Or maybe its stamina is increased by a lot or something. Something like that. Some sort of buffs during nighttime for the T-Rex. I think that would just not only make T-Rex a bit more unique compared to the other Apexes. I know the developers said they don't like Apexes, but let's be real, they're Apexes. Who cares? They're Apexes. I'm not going to call them 5 slots. But yeah, that is idea number 3. And now let's move on to idea number 4. Okay, idea number 4. Now, this idea could also be thrown into idea number 5, which you guys will understand in a minute once I elaborate on what 5 is, but I'm just gonna I'm just going to expand on my thoughts here on this specific topic, and then I'll talk about 5 after this. But they could go hand in hand. You'll understand once I explain that later. But idea number 4 is Apex weight classes. Now, what do I mean by that? Considering how they're changing up the Apexes to like lower their combat weights and do this weird health and armor thing, and then just nerfing all their attack damage. I just think it's just super weird balancing decisions. It's like, at this point, I'm pretty sure Suko could probably 1v1 a bars. Like, it's crazy how much they're nerfing the bigger dinosaurs. Now I know they just came out with like a new trample mechanic, but I mean, it's not that useful when fighting smaller things. I mean, unless they're really small, you know, like a Rex stomping on a raptor or something. Then it's really useful, but I don't know. It's just kind of strange. So I think what could be really good is if they split up the Apexes into 2 categories, heavy and light. For the light Apexes, they should do Spinosaurus, Tyrannotitan, and Deinonychus. Now, I know Deinonychus is kind of a strange pick, because it's like, but it's super bulky and a pretty heavy animal. Why would you put it in the light class? And I'm saying that because it can buff its combat weight, so it would then become a heavier Apex. And they could tweak that ability if they were to do light and heavy Apexes or something like that. And then for the heavy Apexes, you can do T-Rex, Eotrike, and Bars Boldia. And what this would mean is that T-Rex, Bars, and Eo, since they're the more heavily built out of the Apexes, Bars being significantly taller and longer than some of the other Apexes, T-Rex being super bulky compared to Tyrannotitan and Spinosaurus, and Eotrike just being a tank, pretty much. And it has a whole build just centered around being a tank and absorbing damage and dishing it back out. I think that this could work, and it would just mean that the heavier Apexes would have a higher combat weight than the lighter Apexes, which would then coincide with Tyrannotitan being able to heal itself that much and being really fast and agile and having a lot of stamina for an Apex. And it would warrant Spinosaurus having all that armor, which I think they should keep Spinosaurus the way it is. They just need to tweak all of the bigger dinosaurs. I like how Spinosaurus is. It's very tough to take down if you know what you're doing and if you play near water. I love Spino TLC. I don't want them to change it. They have started to change it, and I don't really like these changes. I just hope they keep Spino TLC as much the same as they possibly can. And then they can do some other changes to some of the other Apexes. Oh, and the exact combat weight values for the lighter Apexes, you can keep them at 5,500 combat weight, but for the heavy Apexes, they would go up to 6,000 combat weight. So they would weigh 500 more than the other Apexes. So not a drastic increase, but definitely noticeable. Yeah, and that would also increase the damage for their attacks and warrant their attack damage being nerfed. I can kind of get behind Tyrannotitan's attack damages being nerfed, but honestly, I think they should just buff them a little bit more. Back to, closer to where they used to be, But anyways, yeah, that's just the Apex weight classes idea. Here comes idea number 5, which is a big one. Okay, idea number 5. This is the big one. And that is a brand new game mode. And this would be a survival game mode. Considering how Path of Titan seems to be going in a more arcadey and MMO style of game. And the community seems a bit split on this. I've noticed there's a lot of people who prefer the more survival aspects, and being more like other dinosaur survival games. And there's also people who are in support of the MMO style. So what if we make both parties happy by keeping the adventure game mode with the MMO ideas and all that stuff that those people would enjoy, and then for the more survivalist players who like to play like semi-realism servers and stuff like me and Dino Knight and everybody else, we could have a survival game mode to play that would have tighter restrictions on mix packing and no waste stones, maybe some better like quests, or maybe no quests at all and you just get like passive growth and marks from like exploring the map, but also just like by playing the game you get growth and marks. So yeah, I think that a survival game mode would just benefit the game overall, and they could just keep the MMO stuff and the more arcadey and stylized stuff in the adventure game mode. But yeah, that's the game mode idea, but this also coincides with something else I want to talk about, a surprise category. This is the more lengthy portion of this segment that I wanted to talk about, but I will talk about that here in a second. I need to get my ideas out. Okay, so this is the surprise category at the end here. I know I said it would be lengthy, but you know what, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet because I respect your time. Has anybody noticed that when you look at other apexes, for example, T-Rex kind of got the short hand of the stick when it comes to build variety? If you don't know what I mean, I'm gonna expand upon that here. So we'll just go through the list of the other apexes and just talk about the builds you can create with their abilities, and then circle back to T-Rex and explain why T-Rex just doesn't have the same build variety. So first off, we'll start with Bars. Now Bars has a few different options with its abilities. It can either choose to be more survival orientated, where it can use dazing abilities and knockback to keep predators away and to just focus on surviving and keeping itself alive. Or it can focus on area of effect attacks and being more of a group-based fighter by reducing the damage of its AoE to its friends, but increasing the radius of it. It's got multiple abilities for AoE attacks. It's got more higher damaging abilities. There's just a lot of variety with the Barsbolia. There's a lot you can do with its kit. You can buff the crap out of your defense, but there's a lot going into just being a herd member and AoE and defense tactics. That's just mainly what goes into Barsbolia's kit. Okay, so Eotrike. Eotrike has less complicated builds than Barsbolia does, but it's a bit more complicated than T-Rex. So, for example, you can either go into a full defensive build and go into your block and just spec into making your block as good as possible, or you can spec into just complete offense and use a head slam and sharpen your horns and stuff like that and just buff the crap out of your damage as much as possible. And that's also really good. Or you can make a hybrid build when you can run block and head slam, and it focuses on blocking heavy attacks and countering with heavy attacks. Just block and counter, block and counter. Or you can mix sharpen horns with your block and just buff your damage, but you can also gain armor with your block, or just block damage with your block and then just buff the damage of your normal horn attack with sharpen horns. Like there's a few different things you can do with this. But yeah, that's Eotrix builds. Okay, now Dinokairos, the last of the herbivorous apexes. Although it's technically an omnivore, but whatever. Dinokairos has two obvious builds, so you can either spec into being aquatic and focus on abilities that buff your damage or buff something else, maybe your combat weight or your defense when you're wet, so primarily when you're near water or something. And Duck's aquatic kit definitely benefits from actually being near water instead of something like Suchomimus, where Suchomimus can just do the water spout and get all of its ability buffs while on land. Dinokairos' kit is a lot more reliant on being near the water because of its ability cooldowns and the delays on some of its abilities. Or you can spec into being completely terrestrial, and you can just focus on being a bit faster and maneuverable while you're on land, and buff your damage, buff your bleed. There's a lot of stuff you can do there. Or you can buff your knockback and just toss people around, because Dinokairos does have a couple abilities for a knockback playstyle. And you could knock things in the water or out of the water or splash people with water. There's a lot of things you can do with Dinokairos' kit. A lot of interesting ability combos. Now Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus is a bit more intricate here because it doesn't have an obvious land build, because it doesn't have much of anything that gives it a damage buff while it's on land, like Dinokairos and Suchomimus have. But it does have a clear aquatic set of abilities. But it also has abilities meant for AoE, kind of like Barsboldia, and it can do dazing attacks if you run a certain buff call. Although, from a seasoned Spino player after the TLC, I've been playing Spino a lot after the TLC, I wouldn't recommend the dazing abilities. They're not as good. The AoE attacks on Spino are not as good, despite their high damage. But anyways, yeah, Spinosaurus doesn't have a clear line in the sand with its abilities like the other apexes do, but there's definitely a lot of ability combos you can put in there. It doesn't have a water spout like Duck or Sucho, so if you want aquatic buffs, you're gonna have to like really work for that. It has plenty of armor buffs, so it can max out its defense, or you can also max out your offense as well. You can max out your aquatic maneuverability, make you super dangerous in the water. I love how dangerous Spinosaurus is in the water. The only thing that can really put up a fight against it in the water is Sarcosuchus and Dinokairos now. But even then, I think Spino would definitely be able to beat those two after the TLC. But like I said earlier in the video, I love Spinosaurus TLC. It looks great, it sounds great, its animations are amazing, and its abilities are dope. I love Spinosaurus. It's amazing after the TLC. There's a few nitpicks, but it's whatever. Now on to Tyrannotitan. Okay, for Tyrannotitan, it doesn't, again, like Spinosaurus, it doesn't have a clear line in the sand with its abilities. But it definitely has some build variety. So it has a casual build, I like to call it, where you can run Bite, Heavy Bite, and Blood Soak, which allows you to be able to have as much stamina as possible to use your Heavy Bite a lot more. And since your Heavy Bite does over double the damage of your normal bite, it's very, very useful, especially after the damage nerfs. And having as much stamina as possible is super useful in this game, especially something as fast as Tyrannotitan. And Tyrannotitan does significantly less damage than some of the other apexes, so it does rely on bleed a bit more, so having the extra damage from Heavy Bite is definitely pretty useful. Or you can spec into a Brawler build and run Bite, Flesh Tear, or Frenzied Tear, or whatever it's called, the triple Bite, and Fresh Blood, so you can do as much damage as possible. And you can run the status effect Healing Hide, which makes you really resistant to bleed or fracture or venom or whatever else. So you just recover from those a lot faster, and you can dish out a lot of damage and bleed. Or you can run the feast abilities, like I was talking about in the Pataga Titan segment earlier, which makes it really good at hunting the modded sauropods, funnily enough. It does make it good at fighting other apexes in the base game roster, but you could definitely do that with the other builds Tyrannotitan has. But yeah, I do like the feast abilities. I just think if Tyrannotitan had a giant sauropod to hunt, then it would just make it so much more worth it to have this feast set of abilities, which it technically has big sauropods to hunt with it in the modded roster, but in the base game roster it has nothing. But yeah, now let's circle back to T-Rex. So when it comes to T-Rex, it doesn't have the same build variety that the other apexes have. Like I said, with the semi-aquatic apexes like Spino and Duck, you can either spec into being more on land or in the water. You know, stuff like that. Eotrite can either go full offense or full defense. Bars can go for more survivalist group abilities or just like high damage and defense. And Tyrannotitan can either go for a casual stamina build with a heavy bite that's good for fighting most things, or you can go for a feasts build that's good for fighting things a lot bigger than you and just healing your health and stamina and nerfing the bleed heal of your target. Or you can go for a brawler build and do a lot of damage and bleed. Just a lot more build variety there. But with T-Rex, all of its abilities are just all designed to do the same thing, and that's ambushing. And sure, T-Rex has a lot of success with ambush tactics, but if it gets jumped by stuff, it has a much harder time being able to defend itself than some of the other apexes, because it doesn't have AoE. The only sweeping sort of attacks it has is with its 3-second cooldown tail attack that normally does 15 damage. Sure, it does knockback, but honestly, that's more of a benefit for smaller things, because it just gets them out of the way of the Rex's bite attack. And the bite attacks for T-Rex have gotten damage nerfs. They're not as strong now, so it just relies so much on being near a fractured target, and its crushing bite takes a lot of stamina to use, and it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, and fracture is a very flawed mechanic, which I've talked about in a previous video. I highly recommend you go check that out to see my thoughts on the fracture mechanic and how it can definitely be better, specifically for bigger dinosaurs. And more creatures are starting to get fracture, like Iguanodon has it now. Cerato has it, Dasp has it. Dasp has better fracture abilities now. They've changed up its Bone Snap and the Blunt Teeth abilities, and I like how they work now. I think it's just Bone Snap is kind of weird. It's the charge bite it has. It's not as polished as Rex's is, but that's a different topic that I can go into another time. But at the moment, all of T-Rex's abilities, when you really think about it, are just for ambushing. I mean, there is Blood Rivalry, and what's the other one? The other sense. Power Couple and Blood Rivalry, which realistically are nowhere near as useful as Killing Blows is, because of how much T-Rex's damage relies on that extra 20% damage buff. And then the most you could probably get out of Blood Rivalry is against like a pack of aloes maybe, or something like that. But even then, your lowered combat weight and lower damage after these recent updates just makes it really difficult, especially after like I said earlier, you have to rely on Killing Blows and all these extra buffs to do a lot of damage. And right now, T-Rex only does 60 damage on its bite, which is, I mean, pretty decent. But then when you think about what that really means, T-Rex used to do an 80 damage bite, and even when before these recent damage nerfs for all the apexes, T-Rex was still doing 70 damage on its bite. Now, before all these weird apex changes, Giga was actually doing 65 damage on its bite. It was doing more than T-Rex. And when T-Rex TLC first came out, T-Rex was doing 65 damage on its bite. So this is the lowest damage T-Rex's bite has ever been. I think they need to buff it a bit more, like the base damage of the bite. And I know Rex has abilities to make it immune to Bone Break, which, if we're being honest, because of how Bone Break immunity is already a thing, it's not that much of a useful ability, and that's only useful against, like, killing other T-Rexes or killing Anos. That's basically it. There's nothing much else that just makes that ability worth it, honestly. But yet, on the other hand, when you look at its sub-apex / mid-tier counterpart in Daspletosaurus, Dasp has a lot of abilities to make it different. Like, different Dasp builds are good for different things, and that's what makes pack hunting Dasp really, really dangerous, because you never know what they're going to run. You can run a piercing build and ignore armor and combat weight, but it does leave you open against things your size, because of how much wind up your piercing bite has. Or you can use the heavy bite and go for a more brawler build. Or you can run Fracture and slow your opponents down and do more damage to fractured targets and just break their legs. There's a lot of different build variety you can go with Daspletosaurus that T-Rex just doesn't have. So just to wrap things up here, this is the main reason why I said we could probably make it a Nightstalker, just to give Rex an extra, thing to do. But to just help it be more of a powerhouse like it should be, we should probably buff its damage back to 70 and give it the tenderize mechanic that Anno has. And I'm not sure how you'd want to implement that. There's two ways you could do it. You could either give it tenderize on its normal bite, or you could give it multiple stacks of tenderize on its bone break bites, like crushing bite and bone snap. Which, preferably, I'd want it on the bite. I just like that idea better, so it just takes skill to close the gap with the ambush and land that bone break bite, and then as you're biting, you're just giving them the stacks of tenderize. And if you're good at managing the fracture levels of your opponent, you can get the correct amount of bites that you need in order to get tenderize as a reward. But if you're not good at managing that, if you screw up or you just mess up your combo with your two different bites and you're just 1 or 2 stacks short, then you're going to get punished and your target gets away. Which I do think that instant bone break was just better. I think if we're just going to go the fracture route, I think we should just go all out, because T-Rex is meant to be the fracture specialist. Because it's just got so many abilities that rely on this flawed mechanic. But that is a topic for another video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. I know this surprise segment went on a little bit longer than I thought. I'm sorry about that. I wanted to make it as concise as possible, but I had a lot of thoughts, and I wanted to communicate them in a way that you guys would be able to understand. I know a lot of people think that I glaze T-Rex a whole lot, which I can understand where you're coming from, but I hope this segment just gets across how I feel about the dinosaur. Half the time it just feels like an afterthought compared to some of the other dinosaurs in the game. I mean, if you guys saw that YouTube short the developers made a while back, where back when the Spinosaurus TLC came out like last month, They made a YouTube short showing off all 3 of the big apex carnivores and compared them. They didn't mention Rex at all. I mean, sure, it was on screen, but they never said anything or addressed the existence of T-Rex. They were just like, oh, Spinosaurus is the longest out of the 3, and Tyrannotitan's the fastest. Okay, bye! So, they didn't mention T-Rex at all. And people were even commenting about it. I mean, I commented about it, but there were some other people in there who were too. But yeah, at the end of the day, these are my thoughts. Please leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will be sure to read them. And if I disagree, I will ignore them. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, please consider liking and subscribing. I'll catch you in the next one, and please join the Discord. God bless you guys.